Hey, what's happening? It's me, yours truly, Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live right now from Fredericksburg, Texas. Let me just get a nice little angle there. Welcome to another edition of Sunday Night AstroLive, running a little bit late tonight. Just trying to tie some loose ends together, do a last little few last minute chart things. Let me go over to Facebook and let's let people know over on Facebook that we're doing this right now. So give me 1 second here. Let you guys start to fill in the virtual seats, the virtual stadia. There you go. Let's see what we got here. Hold on. Let's do this. 11th house astrology. That's me. Hey, that's my group. 319 members strong. That's where we're at right there. So let me just do a quick little post here. This is almost unreal. Okay, we got a little catching up to do apparently. Let me do this. All right. Pastorama there. And boom. Okay, so the Facebook peeps know. Let me get out of there real quick and check in with everybody, see where we're all at. We got some people here. Hey, there's Maury. Hey, Maury, Christine, Tamara. All right. Liz Lucius. It is 11:11 in Bali. There's Natasha, Anna. Hi, Susan. Nice to see you, Susan Bull. There's Joan. Joni. Hi, Joan. Jill Wong. Hi, Jill from New Jersey. Tom. Good evening, Tom. Give them a couple minutes to join in. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's Isla and Judy. Yeah, we usually get it together here on Sunday nights so that we can cruise the highways and the byways of the astral connections, the stars in our lives and the stars in our hearts, the points of light that connect us all. And we're going to check some of that out tonight. This Mercury retrograde, man. I got my eyes on it for this Mercury retrograde. I got my eyes out for it. They just had an interesting election held last week in San Francisco, and I believe it was Friday, if I'm not mistaken. And San Francisco elected a new district attorney, and this is not like your average run-of-the-mill district attorney. His name happens to be Chesa Boudin, and Chesa Boudin is 39 years old, and his parents have been serving very long sentences in maximum security prisons or high security prisons, maybe not max, but high security prisons, due to their involvement with the Weather Underground. So he is the son of two members of the Weather Underground who have been essentially in prison since the 1970s. And Chesa Boudin was raised by Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn. He's now the new district attorney for the city of San Francisco. And of course, Bill Ayers is America's favorite terrorist. And I say it in the sense because it seems as though he's gotten a massive free pass. I mean, he did a little time, but after that, he got a teaching job, helped institute Common Core, and also authored Barack Obama's first book. Although both he and Obama will deny it, it's pretty clear that that's what happened. And the Ayers family was very influential in the life of one Barry Soetoro, Barack Hussein Obama, and numerous accounts of connections between Obama and Ayers at an early age, particularly one famous account by a postman who used to deliver mail at the Ayers residence. Bill Ayers' father, by the way, was pretty well off. He he was essentially like the president of a number of different power companies, public utilities companies in the city of Chicago. So the Ayers family were not they were not uh, hurting for money. Let's put it that way. So Obama spent time there when he was, I believe, in between like high school and college, or I think he was going from that that bullshit college he went to in California, and on his way to Columbia, right? And anyway, he was hanging out there, and this mailman was talking to him one day. Basically said, "I'm going to be president of the United States." He also had conversations with Bill Ayers' mother and father, and Bill Ayers' mother just absolutely gushed about Obama and how great he was and what an important man he's going to be. And then the father also had a great deal to say about the young Obama, the Barry Soetoro. So I guess it's not uncommon for the Ayers family to take in future radical leaders and raise them up. And this Chesa Boudin, he has said that one of his main goals is going to be jail reform and prison reform. And you can kind of see where this is going, particularly since his parents are still in prison. They're not in prison in California. I believe they're in prison all the way across the country in New York. But this guy's got all the credentials in the world. He comes from a long line of lefties and revolutionary leaders. So in a lot of ways, he's been born and bred to take the role, to take the mantle of the new left, the vanguard of the new left. And it's probably the first time that outwardly that an American city, a major American city, has an out and out communist for its district attorney. If you're a cop in San Francisco, your life's going to get a whole lot more difficult. Like on one level, it's going to be easier because you won't be able to do shit. But on another level, it'll become a lot more difficult. And I would not be surprised if we wind up seeing defections from the SFPD, people retired early, moving on. And of course, they'll be replaced by a new kind of vanguard of troops. Now, he's not the police commissioner, but he is the district attorney. So he will be determining policies for sentencing and the things that go along with being arrested. So anyway, very interesting development happening during a Mercury retrograde. So we're going to talk about the transit of Mercury tonight, which is happening tomorrow. And it does happen from time to time. It will not happen again until 2032, which is quite interesting. And the transit of Mercury takes place during the signs of Taurus and Scorpio. And in every case, the transit of Mercury is retrograde. So we witness Mercury, theoretically moving across the face of the sun. And in this case, it has the appearance of moving backwards. And, we'll actually be able to see it. It's one of those things that's visible, just like, we can see, we saw the transit of Venus across the sun. We'll see the transit of Mercury, this tiny, tiny little speck in the firmament crossing across the sun. I've got some events that I've pulled from the history books that give us some insight into what we might expect during the transit of Mercury. One of the things that I've found fairly common within the days before and the days after, there does seem to be some correlation with natural disasters and accidents. So I'm going to go over some of those, and we'll look at it from that perspective. Of course, the transit of Mercury is happening on 11/11, and 1111 for a lot of people tends to be a pretty interesting and special day numerologically. 11 is the number of inspiration and revelation. And when you add it together, you get the number of the master builder, and the two work hand in glove. The master builder, without the inspiration and the revelation, is just a 4, pretty much, right? If you're not guided by vision, then you're pretty much just a 4. If you are guided by vision, then the master builder becomes a 22. Pretty much how it works. The visionary place comes from the vibration of the number 11. Of course, 11 is the representative of the sign of Aquarius, since it is the 11th sign in the zodiac. And it's a sign that's often connected to things like insight and seeing into the future, modernity, radicalism, revolutionaries, also hope and vision. Like, I think Aquarius is kind of a visionary planet in some ways, or sorry, visionary sign in some ways. And it can be quite disturbing, but also it can be profound in terms of its ability to gaze into the future and pull the future back into the present, or reach for something that would be deeply future oriented and have that as some kind of primary goal, like the star card in the major arcana, which is also representative of the sign of Aquarius. It's that point of light, that distant point of light, that can be a kind of a guiding force in some ways. So it's a very interesting. A lot of people think I don't like Aquarians. I think Aquarians are very interesting, and I've had a lot of Aquarian friends in my life. I think there's some of the most interesting people in the zodiac. Just like a lot of people think I don't like Geminis. I really like Geminis a lot. And again, I've had a number of Gemini friends and a few Gemini girlfriends along the way. So I've had some insight into the sign. The thing that I talk about with Gemini is the bigger picture stuff. And the bigger picture stuff is how Gemini relates to the duality game. It's really interesting. Will Smith's latest movie, Gemini Man, took a big dump at the box office. It's like, I think, one of the few times Will Smith has had a major sort of turkey bust, turkey based. Somebody told me, who was it? I think it was Jason Whitlock, and he says, whenever there's a movie about clones, none of them do well. And I was trying to think about that, and he might have a point there. I don't think you would consider Invasion of the Body Snatchers a movie about clones. It's not quite the same, but that's what the Gemini Man is about. It's about Will Smith, who's some sort of future manhunter, killer, marauder kind of dude, and he has to face a younger version of himself. So didn't do too well though at the box office, I'll say. But the reason I bring up Gemini, because it seems to be this important component, this kind of codec magica, right, for the duality game, the polarity game. It's almost like there's this there's this force between these two poles, right? There's like this field between these two poles, and it's in between those two poles. That's where the field of manipulation and magic takes place, right? It's where things can get blown up and distorted or amplified or obfuscated. This is kind of my theory on it, and it also has a great sway over us in terms of our worldview, our ideas, our beliefs, our connections with people, and sometimes it can be extremely polarizing. And we're living in a very, very polarizing time. Although Mr. Kanye West, Gemini's Super Deluxe, is doing a very interesting kind of transit of Mercury himself. Being that he's ruled by Mercury, he's going to the other side of his Gemini polarity. If we can believe that this really is the new version of Kanye, right? I mean, this is, if this is Kanye in general, and again, I have my doubts on some of these things because he was MIA for quite a while, after he went on that rant. And if you watch what Kanye was up to prior to his meltdown, which was in Sacramento, California, and it was right around the election with Hillary and Trump. And man, he went after Hillary in a really big way. And then he was hospitalized almost right after that at Sinai Cedar, if I'm not mistaken. And he was MIA for quite a while. He was gone. He was gone, daddy gone. You didn't see Kanye for months. And when he showed up again, it was as if somebody had given a frontal lobotomy. I mean, I'll never forget when, he hooked up with his other Gemini pal, Donald Trump, in Trump Tower, at the bottom of Trump Tower, and he was dazed and confused. And it was like, hello, is anybody home? Anybody home? And Trump seemed a little befuddled in some ways, like, oh, yeah, here's Kanye. Hey, what's going on? What are you doing? But, Kanye had very incredibly, if you watched him prior to that time where he is going to lose his shit, like he was descending deeper and deeper and deeper into this pool of darkness. And he was doing this whole Jesus trip, which was almost like, satanic Jesus, right? That's kind of what his vibe was. And he was doing these really, really weird fashion shows, like very strange fashion shows where people were almost in some kind of light bondage, like slaves, and really expensive stuff. I mean, a lot of money was spent on some of these kinds of, artworks or art pieces. And he was showing up in at Fashion Week with Kim, and he was always scowling, and he was just really angry and dark. And it just seemed like it was getting darker and darker and darker. It was, and all of a sudden, it was just like this cyclonic kind of twist or spin in Sacramento that night, where he started going off and basically got booed off the stage, or the people weren't happy with him. I think they stopped the concert, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, and then he comes out the other side, and now he becomes kind of a MAGA guy. He starts talking about how Democrats can't vote, blacks can't vote Democrat anymore because it's not power. I mean, it's a really interesting phenomenon if you look at it from an astrological perspective, because he is totally flipping from one hemisphere to the other in terms of his like Gemini, polarity. It's fascinating to watch. And now he's got this whole kind of Jesus thing going on. Like he's like theoretically he's born again. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. When I check in internally, I'm not sure if that's really the truth. That's not necessarily what I feel. I have to spend some more time with it, but my instincts tell me that there's something going on here that is not necessarily what it seems. And then now you have Kim Kardashian, which is interesting. Another Gemini, right? Isn't Kim Gemini as well? I think she is. Let me just check out her birth stuff. Pretty sure she's a Gemini. What do we got here? Let's see. My bad. She is the end of Libra, beginning of Scorpio. That's right. So she just had her birthday. I want to look at her chart just a little bit. The thing with Kim Kardashian is she's come out and she said that she doesn't want to wear risque clothing anymore. She wants to be modest. So she is Sag rising, 28 Libra sun. And let's see, anything in Gemini? Well, her descendant is Gemini, so that's going to put Kanye's sun right around her seventh house cusp. And then she's got that Uranus, let's see, Pluto in Libra, Saturn in Libra, Venus in Virgo. true node in Leo, of course. And let's see, Mercury, Scorpio, Uranus, Scorpio. And then she's got that Pisces moon. Interesting. 28 degrees Pisces moon, enshrined with Uranus. Of course, unusual emotions. Very unusual emotions. Let's see. And then she's got her Jupiter's at 28 Virgo. Let's see. My sun is right on her midheaven. How about that? Kim, you should hire me. My son's on your midheaven. I would play a unique role in your destiny. Her Jupiter's right on my sun. How about that? Kim, if you're listening, come on over to Chatlandia. Come join the party. Anyway, there is a really interesting moment. Let me see if I can find this thing, because there is something about this moment when everything kind of changed for Kanye. See if I can find this thing. It's got to be in here somewhere. Yeah. Okay. Here it is. Let me see. There's this really interesting moment where Kanye hits his head on this sign, and it's it says "Watch for pedestrians," and he clunks his head on the sign. This is where, like, the two of them are really in this very kind of dark black phase. You know, they're dealing with the it's like the robes of Saturn, right? There's Saturnian influence. And then so the other thing with this sign that I thought was interesting, there it is. This is what I'm looking at right here. This is one of these moments in time that's really trippy. Really, really trippy. It's like a sign that's literally and figuratively a sign. And I remember looking at this. I'll show this to you guys. And it was like I was kind of blown away when I saw this sign, or when I saw this image. Give me 1 second here. I have to maneuver a few things. I got all these images on my computer. Okay. Let me just fire this up. It'll be a lot easier this way. Let's do this right here. Here we go. It'll just be easier for me to do this. Do a quick screen share. So this is it right here, right? This is where he hits his sign. He hits the sign, and it says "wrong way." Wrong way. And here they are. It's got to be 80 plus degrees, Southern California, and they're totally decked out in their finest Saturn wear. And I thought to myself, this is interesting. Like, if Kanye's really paying attention, he's going the wrong way, right? He is going the wrong way. That his life is headed in the wrong direction. How obvious? How often do you get to have that kind of a clear moment? Well, if you're really paying attention, it happens probably more than you can understand or cogitate or put together. I mean, look, you guys are interesting, so it probably happens to you guys a lot, right? This is a unique group, but this is a clear sign. Kanye, you are going the wrong way. And then he has this gash, which is up around his pineal gland. It's almost around his third eye, and it's not quite in his third eye, but it's close. It's very close. Let me show you the where the gash is after this. Give me 1 second. So this is and you can even see that there's this vibe with him during this time that is just it just feels like evil, like really evil. Like there's something, you know, there's something feeding off of Kanye. I mean, look at this thing, right? So this is where the sign hit him, right here. It's just really just above the pineal gland, left eye, right? So it's the left eye, and look at him. It's like, man, he looks possessed actually here. Looks possessed, and now he's doing something completely different, very different, and was he programmed? Did something happen while he was at Cedar Sinai? Did they clone him? Was he given a new hologram, holographic download? I don't have the answer for that, but I'll tell you this: the guy has done a Gemini flip like I haven't seen done with many Geminis. I think the last Gemini flip that I saw, probably that, I didn't see it. I was around, but I wasn't aware, was when Paul McCartney checked out and Billy Shear stepped in. Kind of a very Gemini thing. Prince, a Gemini, became a symbol for a while. That's a very Gemini sort of thing. Prince had his own kind of conversion trip too. Prince became a Seventh-day Adventist, which I wouldn't recommend to anybody. But he went from being kind of the lewd, lascivious, just let's, the Prince of Eros for rock and funk to, theoretically being a Seventh-day Adventist. So he did a pretty Gemini switch, but not quite like Kanye. Now, Prince did produce a record with Mavis Staples, who's a big gospel singer. And I think some of that came through the record, but it wasn't like Prince was advocating, this transformation, or conversion. Wasn't quite like that at all. So it's a pretty interesting thing that's going on with Kanye, Mr. Gemini, right? Pretty interesting stuff. And even now with Kim Kardashian, she wants to dress more conservatively. Kim wants to, she doesn't want to be a whore anymore. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. People can, have their morality adjusted. It happens all the time. People clean up their act and they become different folks, and they leave certain things behind, and people say, well, what happened to you? Why don't you do this or that or this or that? Or well, I've changed. I'm doing something different now. And it's actually, again, I have to temper any kind of enthusiasm around the Kardashians because they do have a TV show, right? They have a TV show. It's all reality, and it's all fake. And heretofore, they have proven themselves to be a coven of witches, and then casting a spell over Bruce Jenner, who would thus become another person and flip the script and perform another kind of Gemini act of biological alchemy, and thus become Caitlyn. So there's that whole scene going on with those. They're always wearing black. They always wear black. But now Kim is singing a different song, or should I say a different psalm, perhaps. So that's what's going on in the life. What do you guys think? What do you think about what's going on with Kanye? Do you buy it? Do you think it's real? Do you think that he's been programmed to go down this path? What's your take on Kanye? Let's see what we got going on here. I'd love to hear what you have to say. It's like they're Christian in public, but something else in private. Yeah, it's common for Gemini to change religions throughout life. Yep. Prince did not grow up in a Seventh-day home. He might have, but there was a time when he made a real clean break, and maybe he decided that he wanted to reclaim his faith. So he wasn't following. You could be right about that, but there was a time. Let's be clear, he was not a Seventh-day Adventist, even though he might have grown up in that home. What else do we have here? Kardashian soulless. Kim is not genuine. Kanye might be. Okay. Dilligaff about Kanye and Kim. Is it a cloak for something else? Jenner is really close to gender. Isn't that right? Ian says he's going to run for president. You know, Ian, that's a really interesting comment because Kanye did say that he wanted to run for president. He did say that. He said Kanye for president. I think it's 2020. I don't think it's going to be Kanye's time in 2020. But I remember he did say that. Do you think Kanye West could actually win an election if he ran for president? That'd be very interesting. It'd be really interesting to watch and see. And wow, it's let's get the popcorn out for that one. But you're right, Ian. I do remember him talking about running for president. Yep, absolutely. What else do we have here? 2024. Yeah. It occurred to me, Stephen says, Geminis and Libras get along, especially when they both have Pisces moon. They pulled in Kanye and Kim from the next timeline over Lake and Fringe and did a swap. Oh, that's an interesting thought, Dawn. I could dig that. Rob says, I don't buy it. Why would Jimmy Kimmel have him on and make a big show about it? Jimmy's a Luciferian. Yeah, you gotta be part of the club in Hollywood. You got to be a part of the club. And Luciferian is probably one of the cards that Jimmy Kimmel carries. Let's see what else. He has a better chance than Bloomberg. Interesting. I say as far away from the Kardashians as possible. Yeah, the whole Kardashian thing is so bizarre. I did a whole show one time on the Kardashians and all the athletes they dated and basically ruined. Their careers were ruined. They were ruined by these vampiras. The weirdest one is Lamar Odom, who like didn't he die? Like Lamar Odom died. He was in Dennis Hoff's bunny ranch or something like that, and he took so many drugs that he was clinically dead. And now he's back and he's got a book out and he's like on the book circuit. I never thought Lamar Odom as being very intellectual at any point during his basketball career. Yes, Jenner does sound like gender. So Bruce Jenner, if you guys may already know this, but Bruce Jenner is from Newtown, Connecticut, home of Sandy Hook. When I read that the first time I was doing research on Sandy Hook, wow, that's kind of weird. Bruce Jenner's from Sandy Hook. And the other person that's from Sandy Hook is Susan Collins, who wrote The Hunger Games. So you have these two, pretty influential people who come from a very, very small town in Connecticut where probably the closest to a mini 9/11 that's happened since 9/11 took place. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. But one of the things that I explored during that time when looking at Newtown was the satanic connection with Newtown, and it really felt like that there was some pretty heavy satanic roots there, and some very unusual pictures and images, and like, oh wow, this is interesting. And if you wanted to kind of have a dark event, let's say, and a place where people were sworn to secrecy, you might want to have that kind of affiliation on some level, right? Occulted, hidden, tucked away. Did Gene, what's his name, the Uncle Gene, the guy who was what's his name, Gene, the guy who all the kids supposedly came up to his door. Like he kind of seemed like a little bit of a kind of a Satanist guy, didn't he? In a weird way, and it was so weird. The guy was so weird. It was all the stuffed animals and toys, and just very strange. Anyway, I'm sure he's a God-fearing Christian. Actually, I think he might be Jewish, if I'm not mistaken. Though he's got a different thing going on there. Okay, so we talked about Kanye, we talked about Gemini, we talked about duality. Most of you guys aren't buying it. I'm having a hard time buying it myself. We'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. So let's talk a little bit about the chart of the moment. Let's get into transit of Mercury. I can break some of that down. And the again, the transit of Mercury happens during two signs, May and November. And the transit of Mercury, from what I've been able to track down, is always retrograde. So we're not going to have another transit of Mercury though till 2032, which is interesting. It'll be in November. And there have been times when the transit of Mercury again has taken place during an election with a Mercury retrograde. Now we had an election last week here in Fredericksburg. Of course, we didn't do so well at the polls, but it was a good exercise, and certainly learning a lot about the locals as it as this thing continues to kind of progress and have a kind of an afterlife in some ways. Let's see. Why don't I let me do this? Let me go over here. All right, let's hit the chart of the moment. We'll check that out and bring it up. We'll look at where some things are. Give me 1 second. Let's go right here. We'll pop into the chart of the moment. So the one thing that was interesting about this election is that it took them 12 hours, or I think it was 15 hours to get the vote, and it was a Texas thing. It wasn't just a Fredericksburg thing. It was a Texas thing, and very unusual. I talked about it on the show last week. Give me what do we have here? When I start pulling all these charts off here, let's just do this. We'll do it this way. It's easier this way. All right, there we go. Here's the chart of the moment. Let me sock it to you. Remember that phrase? Sock it to you? Sock it to me, baby. Nobody uses sock it to you anymore. Sock it to me. They don't use it anymore. That's one of those phrases that maybe should be left alone. But I wonder now if the PC police would consider that to be violent. Like you wouldn't be able to say, suck it to me. Let me suck it to you. I don't think so. I'm sorry, we can't allow you to say that because socking somebody invokes an image of violence and terror, and it might actually trigger someone. All right, here we go. This is the chart of the moment. This is what we got going on. And the thing I think is really important to keep your eye on is right there, our friend Jupiter getting very close to the old galactic center. It's at 25 degrees. Hey, guess who's having his Jupiter return? That'd be me. So please send all your donations to Robert's Jupiter Return at gmail.com so I can just take in all this fantastic abundance. You know, people say as an astrologer, part of the idea around Jupiter and Sagittarius is that you're supposed to be somewhat lucky. And in some ways I have been lucky. Like there have been times when theoretically I should have died more than just one or two times along the way. So I've escaped a few interesting moments. Let's put it that way. So I would say yes, that is the case. But the thing with Jupiter and Sagittarius, what I found, and this would also hold true for Sagittarius rising, is that it always feels like you get enough, right? You get enough to cover your bases, or you get enough to get you out of a jam, or you get enough for fill in the blank, and then you don't get more than enough. it feels kind of like this. Yeah, here you go. You're lucky. You're fortunate. You're endowed with this thing, and this for this moment, or for however long you need it, or whatever that thing is. And that, but I've never experienced it as like just out and out sort of stupendous kind of blind luck. I would not say that. I would say that would be more along the lines of either Jupiter in the fifth house, which I've seen people with Jupiter in the fifth house can be quite lucky. Jupiter in the second house, I've seen people get very lucky that have Jupiter natally in the second house. And also sometimes every now and then Jupiter in the eighth house can be very fortuitous. And for under different circumstances, like Jupiter in the fifth house, uh, generally can be pretty good for gambling. And you may have really big highs and really big lows, but the highs will be pretty good with Jupiter in the fifth house. And Jupiter in the second house, I've just seen people lucky with money and possessions all the time with Jupiter in the second house. So if you have Jupiter in the second house, consider yourself blessed. Here we go. Chart of the moment. We've got Cancer on the ascendant. And there's that true note just now entering into the final decan. So it's now entering into the Cancerian decan, and issues around femininity and motherhood and again water. I really felt like we had a shot with this thing with the water, but when I looked at the chart, maybe I'll bring it up again. When I looked at the chart for when the election ended, there was a lot of hanky panky going on in the eighth house of the chart when the polls closed. So we had an Aquarius midheaven when the polls closed on Tuesday night, and then Saturn, South Node, and Pluto, all in the eighth house. That was a bit troublesome. When I saw that, I was like, I didn't like that. I didn't like the Saturn, Pluto, South Node in the eighth house when the polls closed, because something, in my estimation, probably did take place that we're not aware of, and I think at some level might have affected the vote. So I know I don't want to. One of the things I don't want to do is I don't want to try to find like a conspiracy as to why our ballot measure didn't pass. I don't want to do that, but I do, from an astrological perspective, I have to take note of that. Right? That's like the hidden hand in the eighth house. Power, Capricorn, Saturn, plutocrats, manipulation. So maybe I'll bring that chart up later. Maybe I won't. I don't know. But here we go. We got the true node and Cancer at 9 degrees. So I don't know whether you know this or not. I need to pass it along. But this kid, James Younger, who was allowed to live with his mother, and the mother having full custodial possession of James and his health. He showed up at school the other day as a boy, which has been different. So I just need to put that out there. And what's interesting about James and his brother Jude is that they're twins, right? They're twins. We're back into the Gemini dialogue. So again, just wanted to keep you abreast that he did show up as a boy the other day at school, apparently. And I don't know if the mother has decided to kind of back off, or I don't know what her story is, but I'm sure we'll continue to hear more about that as time goes on. So here we go, True Node retro. It's moving now into that first decan, and I think that the issues that are connected to things like home and family and water and femininity and loyalty. I find Cancer to be an extremely loyal sign. Sometimes when you want to break up with them, they're a little too loyal. You ever try to break up with a Cancerian person? Doesn't go very well. I can tell you that right now. But or if you have aspects of in Cancer in your chart, but it's the claws, right? Clinging, holding on. right? So it's like an extreme version of loyalty. Anyway, we've got that true node in Cancer, and we're going to see more of this now between obviously now and the end of May, beginning of April. Actually, it's end of April, beginning of May. That's when the nodes make their shift into Gemini. That's going to be a trip, right? When the node shifts into Gemini, the south node in Sagittarius. Yeah, what's the story around truth going to be during that phase and that sequence in time? Are we just going to be completely in a hall of mirrors with that true node in Gemini, or are we going to be able to? Because there, one of the other things with this dance between the nodes is that there is this idea that you need to integrate the south node with the north node. You don't integrate the south node by going to the south node and staking planting a flag there. You don't do it that way. You do it by working the north node and then understanding at some level kind of what's going on back here, so that you can, at the very least, be more impactful and effective here. So in that regard, what we have with the south node in Capricorn would be to somehow kind of recognize where we are Capricornian deficient. And that what we would do is we would take the Capricornian deficiency, hold that space, and apply it to what's going on here on some level, right? So in our case, we decided we were going to get a ballot measure and get all the signatures that we needed. And so we did the Capricorn dance. That's what we did. We went through the Capricorn gateway. When we got close to 550 signatures, which was the amount that we needed to amend the city charter. So we were using and tapping into the back door here. But then our effort was concerted and really focused on water, which is Cancerian. And I think that I think it was a really good effort. I think we're also dealing with the intensity of Pluto and Saturn and that south node and the night of the election in the 8th house. But between now and, like I said, so the reason I went there is because I wanted to kind of understand or speculate how the Sagittarius south node with the true node in Gemini will impact the collective. And again, on that level, the two may not necessarily be as disconnected or indistinct from one another. Like there could be some kind of synergy between the two. So if Sagittarius represents some kind of ideal around truth and authenticity, that there would be a compunction, or people would be compelled to speak that through the true node in Gemini, that would be a way to do this. And how does that work? Well, Gemini is a lot of ways very fact-based. You look at Gemini, it's really about breaking things down, component parts, data points. Gemini and Virgo share that relationship with Mercury together. And while Sagittarius is the big picture, the big idea, the big concept, Gemini is the what is this, the what is this, the what is this, the what is this, what is this. So there can be something interesting between when the nodes do shift. But I also feel like there's going to be a high degree of polarization that'll take place during that time. And there's some really disturbing trends that are starting to rear their ugly head. And maybe I'll get into that a little bit later if I have some time. So these are collective trends. And yeah, I'll get into maybe I'll get into it next week because I got a different path for the show anyway. So here's Mars in Libra down here at the bottom, right? And it's getting ready to move into Scorpio, very intense Scorpio. And we've kind of come out of this Mars-Pluto square. Now Mars is starting to separate from Pluto now. So some of that intensity that we were looking at and dealing with over the past week is beginning to, I wouldn't necessarily say dissipate, but the tension isn't as great. And I don't know if you, one of the things that I did feel around this election, especially during like the last 5 days, was kind of an underlying tension with a lot of just in the area and the air. I did feel some positivity too, but I did feel some underlying tension. And some very intense stuff came out last week during, oh, look who's here. Speaking of intense, the man. Some very intense stuff did come out last week um, that that was quite violent, actually. I don't know if you guys watch this, know this channel. It's called World Star Hip Hop. Have you ever seen this channel? It's really low vibration stuff, and it's basically urban kids, right? Urban kids, so-called black urban kids who decide that they want to, go postal on people and you know do stuff like shove guns into the face of a 10-year-old, right? I mean, they do shit like that on World Star Hip Hop. It's really not the highest vibe. Anyway, one of the videos that showed up this week was this 10-year-old kid with a number of guns being thrust in his face and being threatened. And I put it up on Facebook, and it was incredibly disturbing, very disturbing. That image surfaced during that Mars Pluto square as well. But Mars is starting to move away now, and it's actually moving into a nice little sextile there with Jupiter, and that's going to happen over the course of the next couple of days. So that can be pretty inspiring, a Mars Jupiter sextile. But if you're inclined to use that energy for the activation of some form of higher consciousness or some kind of greater understanding. It's very legal. It's a very legal aspect, by the way, right? Because you were dealing with the scales of justice, and we're dealing with Sagittarius, which is the ruler of law. So it's interesting. If you have any legal stuff you got to take care of, the next couple of days can be pretty good for you. So just file that away. And also just in terms of kind of, justice, righteousness, that kind of vibe is in the air, and it can be positive. The sextile, of course, is something that you have to activate. That's the nature of the sextile. But then we get also the square to Pluto and the square to Mars, and then we've got a kind of a wide. Let's see. Is that an opposition? Looks like the moon has just come out of opposition now, and we're moving into a full moon phase. And we're going to have a full moon on Monday with that Uranus conjunction to the moon. So remember, when we started off with the new moon, we had the moon conjunct the sun, and it was opposing Uranus. And now the moon has come halfway around the chart and will be conjuncting Uranus. So that's kind of it's kind of a loony time, right? It's kind of crazy, but the moon Uranus conjunction, just like Liz Warren. She's a Cancer with which is the ruling planet of Cancer is the moon, of course, conjunct Uranus. So yeah, interesting. Monetarily, um, yeah, I'm not too concerned about the money with the moon Uranus conjunction, but I will say when we get into this Mercury transit stuff, and you can look at some of the natural disasters and accidents, that's one thing I might be a bit concerned about with the moon Uranus conjunction in Taurus. Might be concerned about it because there tends to be kind of this history with the Mercury transit, which we'll get into. We got a nice trine, well, Sun Neptune trine going on right here. Uh, you know, I think that this Sun Neptune trine makes it easier to kind of let go and surrender, and find the path of least resistance. And you're going to start off your Monday with that because the sun will is beginning to separate a little bit, but it'll still be in trine with Neptune, fairly closely for the next 72 hours. So think about the path of least resistance. How can that serve you? Now we're getting into the language of flow, and I'm not talking flow from progressive. I'm talking flow as in flowing, letting things go, and then moving to wherever the energy or wherever the sort of the new intention, the undercurrent of the new intention wants to take you, right? Let's see. We have, well, it's real brief. The moon is moving out of orb a little bit with Jupiter, and Uranus is actually moving backwards. So technically speaking, it's getting closer to kind of an out of element sextile with Jupiter and Sagittarius. That's very interesting. That's very, very interesting. My feeling about that, my take on that is, let me see if I can wrap my head around it. It's sort of like this opportunity to replace something, or something comes back into your life, or has the potential of coming back into your life, and it's almost like something that was lost is retrieved, and it's almost the feeling is almost like dumbfounded in some ways, like how did this happen, right? That's the energy around this. And I would from a collective, or maybe from a mundane perspective, this would be something along the lines of somebody who's been missing for a while and shows up, or something that had been missing for a while and all of a sudden it reappears, and really towards some more positive effect. That's my sense. So I actually like the retrograde and coming back into this interesting trine with Jupiter. And as Jupiter begins to move forward and progress, it's going to move into Capricorn. That's going to happen at the end of November, beginning of December, and that's when it gets really into a much tighter orb with Uranus. So we're going to have a Jupiter Uranus trine again at the end of the month. I mean, really elemental. This is not elemental. This is different, but it's I think it's interesting, and it could be a bit shocking too in some ways. I'm really picking up something around the Pope around this. There's something connected with the Pope, who happens to be a Sagittarius as well. There's information here. There's something about the Pope that is, and I think we're going to be learning about in the next, I'd say, week to 10 days. It might be the Pope, possibly money. No, it's not. No, it's not about that. To me, this is more ideological. This is ideological. There's something ideological that philosophical, religious, that the Pope is going to weigh in on, and I think it's going to surprise some people here. So keep your eye on the Pope for the next week. Okay, what else we have? Saturn Pluto conjunction right there. Saturn's getting closer. Of course, we're going to be experiencing that in the not so distant future. I've talked a lot about that over a number of different shows and lectures that I've given recently. As I see this part of the eclipse cycle that we're in, and really kicks off in a big way on the 26th of December. And what else do we have? I think those are the main kinds of, I think those are the main aspects for now. There's not a lot of air. If you look at elementally, what we're dealing with here is we don't have a lot of air. So there's not a lot of objectivity out there right now from an astrological perspective. And the objectivity, which is what we connect air with, is in Libra, and it's being at this point kind of guided by Mars, which is not very objective in a lot of ways. When it's cause oriented, it can be very subjective, because generally speaking, it wants to take a side, or it's kind of radically asserting itself to achieve some balance. I wonder if this is like connected to that election in San Francisco, that social justice Mars and Libra squaring that, because that, I tell you, that's when it would have happened, right? That Mars Pluto square. Mars would have been at around 22, right? I think around 23, 22 on Friday. 20, so it would have been right in that intense square. And what do we have? We've got a communist district of attorney in San Francisco. You know, like San Francisco deserves it. I couldn't think of another city, better city. You see what happens in San Francisco, though, is that it becomes a launching pad for national politics, right? Especially on the left. You know, Dianne Feinstein, state senator, was mayor of San Francisco. Gavin Newsom, governor of California. He's was one time the mayor of San Francisco, and no doubt they've got plans for little Gavin to potentially run for president of the United States. Kamala Harris, she was the district of attorney for San Francisco, and then rose up through the ranks of the California state government, and is now a senator, right, from California as well, and launched an incredibly unsuccessful run for the presidency. Thank God. But you can see now, you can see the role that San Francisco plays. It plays it's a launching pad. So I have no doubt that if Mr. Boudin sticks around with all of his Leo credentials, he's a Leo, born, I believe, August 21st, that he'll wind up at some point also being part of a more national profile, greater national profile. But that's where that Mars-Pluto square really, I think, had some impact when he got elected on, I think it was Friday. Friday is when they had the election, or Thursday. Anyway, all right. There's your chart of the moment. Let me stop the share here. And we got some more ground to cover. So let me check in with you guys, see where you're at. Let's see what we got here. My ex-husband is a Sag. We get along better now that we've been divorced for years. Oh, that's funny. The Pope is going to baptize some aliens. Pope may get some pedo accusations that legalities may be, many close people got arrested. Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting, Sean. I did not know that. What else do we have here? Woke up from a vivid dream this AM, and I wrote, let it go. There you go. Let's see. My sister-in-law called out of the blue to talk to her brother. It's been 3 years since his dad passed away. We have tried to keep lines of communication, but it was, yeah, I think that's what this Uranus Jupiter sextile is interest. I mean, the square is actually, it's a trine. It's interesting because we're dealing with unusual elements. You know, we're dealing with this kind of electrified Earth. My new favorite word is piezoelectric. I love this word, piezoelectric. I watched this great documentary last night with L.A. Marzulli and Brian Forster. You guys know who they are, right? And it's a really great documentary. And they go down into South America in search of these giants, right? The elongated skulls and everything. And they go to this Temple of the Sun in Peru, and man, these stones are just amazing, just mind blowing. And when Brian Forrester breaks this stuff down, it's remarkable because it's like you can see that there is like a layer of these massive stones that are really like incredibly cut, and you can't even get a hair inside of these stones, between these stones. They're incredible. And then on the next level, there's what the Incans did. And the Incans and their stonework is in many ways it's quite primitive. And you can see it, they're stacked on top of each other. And then they have like the next layer. This is I think it might be in Cusco, but there's another layer of stones on top of that, which is sort of like the stonework of the Spanish colonialists. And so you see these three layers of history through the stones. Anyway, there's this these stones that they believe were at this Temple of the Sun, that their idea around this was that they're piezoelectric, meaning that they conduct current. And so the idea here was that, you know, in these really prehistorical megalithic structures that they believe, and I'm in this camp too, were created by, a really incredibly intelligent species, the Anunnaki, the Elohim, whatever, group you want to ascribe to them. But their idea was that these stones, which were located around the planet, were actually able to drive current, and that they were able to power their activities, and they were able to power their civilizations and communities through this grid network, where these stones would be essentially conduits for energy. Fascinating stuff. Really, really fascinating. And that kind of gets into, in some ways, that the electrification of the Earth with Uranus in Taurus, and then this kind of these interesting ideas that the trine with Jupiter and Sagittarius can bring about. Let your mind wander. Maybe you can come up with your own interesting revelations and aha moments. While we've got this nice trine going on. So it'll be 11/11, and it can be, I think, in my estimation, a pretty inspirational day. I think it's Leonardo DiCaprio's birthday tomorrow, isn't it? Wasn't he born 11/11? I think he was, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's an 11/11 guy, born on 11/11. So let's get into some of this transit of Mercury stuff. Let's see. Let's see what else we have here. We got, I just saw something on the Pope. What else we have here? Oh, we have Ani. Let's see. Cryptic Tale, Cerebral Narcissist, Current Pressure, Don't know these names. I'm Australia. What else do we have here? They seem to be built for giants. Hold on a second. I gotta catch up on you guys. Okay, we're good. Ani's a natural preacher. She's a Sag. It becomes second nature to her. Okay, so let's see what we have here. And I mean that in a good sense. All right. Oh, here's the image. Such a disturbing image, man. I don't know if I want to play it. I don't know if I want to. God, such a disturbing image. Such a disturbing image. Okay, so let's get into the transit of Mercury a little bit. I'm just going to throw some of these dates up here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Now, what's interesting, at least what I found about the transit of Mercury, is that it doesn't always occur, or these events sometimes, but quite often, they will occur a little bit after the transit of Mercury. So, and remember that this is, and I'm not going to go sequentially, that the transit of Mercury happens during either Taurus or Scorpio. So this is one of the events that I honed in on. Now, the transit of Mercury in 2003 happened on May 6th. So this was just 2 days, and we have 30 German passengers and the driver of a tourist bus are killed by a train collision at a railroad crossing near Seefolk, Hungary. 12 people are injured. Most of the passengers came from Lower Saxony or Schleswig-Holstein. And then also now, it's not quite the same, but it does represent information and computers. A vulnerability in the Microsoft Passport Internet Authentication System is announced, which allows an attacker to change the victim's password and thereby hijack their account. This affects Hotmail and other passport-enabled systems, allowing an attacker to use the victim's email account to obtain personal data such as credit card numbers. Now, this was just 2 days after the Mercury transit. Remember, it's Mercury retrograde. So this was like, wow. And this is not the only, it's not the only action. Let me find another one here. So we can grab another one. Let's see what we have. Oh, right. Here we go. This is just a couple days after that. This is May 9th, 2003. And just 3 days after the transit of Mercury, as many as 129 are feared dead after a door opens on a plane flying from Kinshasa to Lubumbashi, the Democratic Republic of Congo. The victims were sucked from the plane, which returned to Kinshasa after the incident. Although the airline to which the plane belongs to is unknown, the plane involved in the tragedy has a logo of Ukrainian Cargo Airlines. Isn't that interesting? Ukrainian Cargo Airlines. So I wonder if we're going to be dealing with some interesting Ukrainian information over the course of the next couple of days. Very interesting. Since it's going backwards, we're looking backwards. But again, it's another accident. Can you imagine being on that plane and just watching the door fly open? How does a door open on a plane, by the way? Does somebody open a door? Does it blow open? What else was on that plane besides human cargo, right? Ukrainian Cargo Airlines, and they're carrying people. Gee, wonder what's going on there. How many people? Right, 129. Wonder how old they were. Question mark. All right, what else we got? Okay, let's try this one. I feel like I'm opening up fortune cookies. Oh, this is an interesting one right here. All right, so let me save this one for. Hold on. I do want to do this sequentially. Here's another one. All right. Yes. So this is from November 11th. This is 11/11, 2006, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that transit of Mercury actually took place on what was it? November 6th, November 8th, November 8th. So this is just 3 days. This is just 3 days after. So there tends to be like a spike in activity after these Mercury transits a couple days afterwards. So here we go. Here's another one. Okay, so what do we have here? This one's pretty violent, but you'll also see like explosions and earthquakes around these transits of Mercury. So here's the Iraq insurgency. At least 8 people are killed and 30 injured in 2 simultaneous explosions in Baghdad. And then we have on the same day a 5.9 earthquake that happens in Papua New Guinea. There's some other stuff going on here too, right? Like they found a giant field of natural gas. The government of Turkmenistan. About that. Of course, the United States is going to veto the fact that Israel went in and shot a bunch of people in the Gaza Strip. That happened on that day. We got some Somali civil wars, a lot of violence happening right around this time. Really violent stuff. And, you know, that's when Pluto was in Sagittarius and hadn't gone into Capricorn yet. And there's a lot of heavy duty international and global violence when Pluto was in Sagittarius. But this is what I found, like right here, right here, the Iraq insurgency, the explosions, and then the earthquake. That one was interesting. Okay. Okay. And then let's see. And I'm just going back a few years. I'm not going all the way, back into the annals of history and time. Right. So this was this was like, okay, so this was 3 days after transit of Mercury on November 18th in 1999. 1999. This is some other really strange stuff. In College Station, 12 people are killed and 27 injured when Texas A&M University's Aggie bonfire collapses during the construction of the bonfire. Remember that? It was a big deal. They still do it now. They thought that they were going to stop it, but they still do this giant bonfire. I think it was when they would play Texas, because they used to be big rivals. They're not rivals anymore. They moved into different conferences. So that happened. And then there's this, which is Another thing right here. This is also Democratic Republic of Congo, Convair C-580, operated by Compagnie Aérienne Africaine, crashes on a forced landing. 2 engine problems, no fatalities. Again, there's a theme here with like what happens kind of after this transit of Mercury. Let's see what else I have. This is the one that really tripped me out a little bit right here. Okay, so this was in, let's see, it was in, I think it was 2016. Let me just make sure I got the right date here. 1 second. This was really interesting. I don't want to mess up my credibility. Give me 1 second. All right, so okay, May. God, there was a lot going on during that time. Holy smokes, May was heavy. May 2016 was a heavy month. Okay, so we're looking at 9th. All right. So May 9th. Let's see. So okay, this is really interesting too. And I did not factor this one in, but I have to because this is just 4 days before the transit of Mercury. Let me throw this up there. This is a big one. It's a really big one. Right here. So this is the 5th. So we're talking just 4 days. There was the Fort McMurray wildfire in Alberta. Do you remember that? That was huge. It was huge. And you know why this fire happened? This fire happened because there is a massive uranium field right here, and that the fires apparently were set or ignited due to the fact they wanted to get people off the area. Like this is where uranium one like gets its uranium and ships it out to other countries, specifically Russia and Ukraine, right? We also have another bus accident here. 12 killed, 30 others injured after a bus plunges into a ravine, Santa Cruz province. This is just a few days before the Mercury transit. This is the day of the Mercury transit. We have the Aleppo offensive right there. That is the day of the Mercury transit. And then there is this one piece of information that was really interesting. Where is it? All right, so here's the Mercury transit on the 9th. So the Aleppo happened just a couple days before. All right, there, and then okay, a day after, there's a more disaster happening with the McMurray wildfire. With the majority of Canada's oil sands industry and a third of the country's total oil output. Remember, they've got uranium there. This happens there's even more activity happening just a few days day after the transit of Mercury. Oh, where is this one piece here? I gotta find this. Right there. Okay, this is what was really interesting. So happens on the 9th, and just 3 days after the 9th. Of course, you have your garden variety Al-Qaeda shit right there, killing militants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But right here, this is what was really interesting. Right here is Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. The government of Malaysia confirms that 2 or more pieces of debris found in South Africa and Rodriguez Island off the coast of Mauritius are almost certainly from the Malaysia Airlines 370 disappeared 2 years ago. I don't buy that, by the way. But again, it's a Mercury retrograde. Okay. So you're going to have some retrograde information. I think that plane showed up and was shot down over Ukraine. The same plane was shot down over Ukraine. So these are just a few of the how do I say this? These are a few events that seem to kind of constellate around this transit of Mercury. So the question is, could we expect, more of this? And if we can see the pattern historically, within that, 2 to 3 day time frame, kind of before and after, specifically after, can we make some kind of prognostication that the coming transit of Mercury, which is tomorrow, in the days that follow, that we might actually see something very similar, that there may be an uptick or an upswing in things like accidents, explosions, sometimes even pieces of prior events that may surface or manifest. It's an interesting thought, and what I try to do is I try to look for patterns, because when you find patterns, they tend to repeat themselves. Patterns and cycles repeat. So the one pattern or the one constant that I found in the days after the transit of Mercury does seem to be connected to disasters, explosions, and or accidents. So I'm not hoping that anybody has an accident or there's a massive explosion. That's not what I'm, but I'm just noticing a pattern here. And it's interesting because it's always between two signs. It's Taurus and Scorpio, which are fixed signs. So when we have this transit of Mercury and in the retrograde motion, there's something about perhaps the disassembling of the fixity. It almost feels to me like there's it's almost like, to me, it kind of feels like a pressure valve. There's some kind of pressure released with this transit of Mercury. Anyway, that's my take on it. And of course, in your own life, it's going to be taking place in a certain area of your chart. So in my chart, it's the 12th house, and I'm going to lay low. In fact, I'm taking a bit of a break this week because I am going to be doing some traveling later in the week. Knock on wood. You know what I found out? I found out that the Leo King calls his company 12th House Productions. I found that out. I thought that was interesting. I wonder if he was pissed that I had the 11th house. I told you that I think the Leo King took a shot at me last week. He was talking about politics and fluoride. Yeah, he was. He was talking about it. I was like, oh, I wonder if Mr. Leo King's taking that. Why would he take a shot at me? He's a big guy. He's a big deal. He's a big deal. He's got a worldwide astrological empire, right? And I'm like this kind of guy on the rings of Saturn, with a small group of people that like to hang out and chat my chat room. Why would he want to do that? Interesting. Okay, let me do a few more charts here tonight. So the consensus with the transit of Saturn is that the transit of Mercury is that there tends to be some very interesting phenomena that follows in the days after, right? Quotes. And then we're also coming upon this Jupiter conjunction with the galactic center. That's going to be happening by the end of the month, and the Jupiter is getting closer and closer. It's a very interesting time. Very interesting time. I think here's what I think. I think it'd be really good to unplug when Jupiter gets close to the galactic center. So just before and around the Thanksgiving holidays, right? I unplug for a little bit. See if you can step out of the noise for a couple days, or maybe it's just a day. Try it for a day. Get out in nature, do a brisk walk in nature, and see if you can connect with that galactic point inside of yourself, which is your cosmic origin in a lot of ways, the mind of God. All right, let's look at a few other charts tonight. Let's see. Uh-oh. Things are not going well, apparently, with the old fantasy team. I just got a text from my fantasy football partner. I'll read it to you. Fucking Dallas defense. That must mean that the Vikings are running it up. All right, what do we got here? Let's see. What do we got here? What do I have here in my little bag of tricks? So tomorrow is Patton's birthday. We talked about Patton last week, and Patton is a Scorpio. He was born on 11/11. You know what's really interesting about Patton is that he was born kind of just like on the other side of the Civil War. It's really interesting that he plays this huge role in the 20th century, and probably could have played a bigger role in some ways. But where's this chart? I just had it up here. Here it is. Yeah, and I have another chart for him too. This is I have his death chart here, and then let's see what else. Oh, this is another. Before I get into this, this was another really interesting transit of Mercury set of events. Let me just throw this up here too. This is interesting. This was May 9th, 2016. This was, I believe, the day of the transit of Mercury. The Panama Papers went online at the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Of course, nothing came of it, but very interesting stuff. This is where people were essentially exposed for laundering their money. It was the Panama Papers. And then, of course, what do we have here, right? At least 7 are killed and 30 injured in a bus accident in Ranchi, the capital of the Indian state of Jharkhand. The death toll from yesterday's landslide in Taining County, China, Fujian Province, 14. Suicide car bomb, Mogadishu. It's interesting. Again, transit of Mercury stuff. Okay. Let me stop that. I just found that. All right, let me find the Patton thing. I mean, the first thing to do really for Patton would be to just kind of look at his chart in general, because there's something about his chart that I found to be really interesting. Okay. And it has to do with our favorite planet fixed star, Algol. All right, hold on. Where did it go? Whoops. You don't want that. Oh, sharing is paused. Let me stop the share. Hold on. Let me get back. Give me 1 second. You get to see all my secret emails. Okay. All right. So here's okay. So this is Patton's birth chart, natal chart. So what I found to be really interesting as I looked at this chart is that he had the true node, the south node in Pisces in his 10th house, and his midheaven was Pisces. And Patton was a mystical mother. And he was really into stuff like past lives and He had a deeply mystical side to him. And to me, that's really defined by that 0 degree Pisces midheaven. But he always wound up, which was interesting. Like Omar Bradley was not the general that Patton was, but it was Omar Bradley that was more, in some ways, more celebrated and given the more choice or juicy um, um, assignments, right? Uh, Eisenhower, not even close to being the general that Patton was. And Eisenhower became president. And in fact, Patton wound up having to step down from his command uh, because he slapped a guy who was essentially being a coward. And the press really went after Patton in a very big way, huge way. They made. I mean, he must have hated that. The press came after him really, really hard, and there were all these like cartoons and caricatures, and what happened was is that there was a guy who was he was kind of a deserter, like he was freaked out and shell shocked. He didn't want to go back out there, and there were all these guys who were in the infirmary, and they were without limbs and stuff, and Patton's sitting down, talking to them, praying with them, and here's this guy. There's nothing wrong with him, and he winds up slapping the shit out of him, and because of that, he had to step down from his command. They eventually brought him back in to kind of run interference and be kind of a decoy. But that's that South Node in Pisces in the 10th house. And he became kind of a scapegoat in some ways. It was not a very good moment for George S. Patton. And he has this true node conjunct Jupiter. And I think that would have given him just an incredible amount of belief and faith in who he is and what he would do and what he could do. That's what I think. And his Jupiter's at 29 Virgo. Same degree as Kim Kardashian. Interesting. Conjunct my son. But it's weird because we see the effect of the South Node in the 10th house. Fame was not kind to George Patton, not kind at all. And in fact, he wound up again playing a bit of the role of the scapegoat, the Piscean effect. And what he did was he scolded somebody who was theoretically a victim, and then he became the transgressor, even though it was probably chicken shit. So he had the sun in the 6th house in Scorpio. And one of the things that people remarked about with Patton was that he was able to, while still retain his status as being a commander and a general, he was also very good at winning the respect of his troops if they weren't freaking out in the infirmary. And then we have this interesting Jupiter conjunction with Uranus. And then the trine with Uranus and Pluto in the 12th house and Neptune in the 12th house. And they're retrograde. And again, I want to reiterate that Patton was a very big believer in past lives, and that he would basically quote chapter and verse over, where Alexander was. He believed he was Alexander. And he says, "I was here. I've been here. This was my place." And that's very much like a Pluto Neptune conjunction. That's not quite conjunct, but Pluto and Neptune in the 12th house, and then the trine with Jupiter, and then the trine with Uranus, which turns it into something much bigger. right? Because that's what the Jupiter trine will do. And Uranus makes it completely, uh, unusual and individualistic and kind of very much outside the box. And he's a creative thinker. That was a creative thinker with Uranus in the fifth. Now here's where it's really interesting. The other thing with him, he had the Mercury in Sagittarius, which made him a bit impetuous, right? Right. He's bright. Look, he's got Mercury conjunct Antares. Antares is associated with war. Antares is a warrior. And he's got conjunct Antares. It's interesting. Very interesting. And then the sextile of Jupiter and Uranus is a very creative and improvisational thinker. Patton came to ideas in a very different kind of way. And here's where it's really interesting. Well, I think all of it's interesting. But what happened? We have audio problems. Sorry. How's that? Thank you. My engineer. I was leaning on the cable. Here's what I think is really interesting. Remember, here we got our fixed star Algol right there, decapitation. And it's conjunct Neptune in the 12th house. Do you know how Patton died? He died in a car accident in 1945, I believe it was December 8th, and they were going hunting, and they were in Germany, and they hit another vehicle, an American vehicle, and Patton broke his neck. He broke his neck. Right there, boom. Fixed star Algol, right on Neptune. And again, to me, it would be indicative in some ways of a past life wound or past life injury, the decapitation. And he died 12 days later in a hospital with congestive heart failure. He was never able to walk again. Very unusual. There are a lot of conspiracy theories around Patton's death as well. One of the things that he did is that if you ever read Patton's letters, I'm going to tell you something. Some of the stuff that I talk about, you should really download, because I think there's going to be a time in the future where some of the stuff is not going to be, you're not going to be able to find it. It's just going to be gone. The internet's going to they're just pulling stuff. Even while we're sleeping, they're pulling stuff from the internet. And it's like, I think it's a major eradication problem. Look at that, part of fortune in Aries. Look at that, the warrior. Anyway, you should read Patton's letters from Germany. They're very illuminating. Patton was seeing what really happened during the war and who we were really fighting for. There's a very interesting picture of Roosevelt and Stalin and Churchill all sitting together. And it dawned on me when I saw that picture that all three of them were fucking communists. They're all commies. Clearly, Stalin was, obviously. And if you go back during the time when FDR was alive, people hated FDR. They hated him. They hated him because he was a socialist communist. I mean, the New Deal, I mean, people were not into him at all. History looks back and shines a golden light on FDR, but that was not the case. And he knew what he was doing. He knew that he was going to piss people off and create bigger governments and create more of a socialist kind of agency through the New Deal and the WPA and all that stuff. So we know that Roosevelt was a socialist and a communist. We know that Stalin was. So what about Churchill? Yeah. So we basically were the commies won. The commies won in World War II. Right. The commies beat the democratic socialists. The communist socialists beat the democratic socialists. But Patton figured things out, and he watched how the Germans were treated by the Russians after the war, and it was pretty bad, really, really bad. So if you can find the letters, Patton's letters online, check them out. You'll get some insight into what was really going on during the war and even after. It was a very illuminating experience for him, and of course he dies. Interesting, right? Okay, so I got a couple more charts here before we sign off tonight. So one of the things that I looked at last week, it's kind of this ongoing series. First of all, I looked at Trump and the French Revolution, and then I looked at the relationship between Trump and Louis XVI, which was extremely interesting in terms of past life chart and connections all over. So what I did is I wanted to look at the relation between Ivanka Trump and Marie Antoinette. And you'll find this to be very, very interesting. I put their charts together. Let's have a look here. All right. Okay. So what's fascinating is that we actually know Marie Antoinette's birth time. We don't know Ivanka Trump's birth time. But in order to look at their two charts together, obviously I don't. So let me bring them onto the deck here. So this is Marie Antoinette. She's on the inside of the chart. She's a Cancer rising, and she has Mars in Cancer, as you see, part of fortune in Cancer. She has a Libra moon, right? And her sun sign is, oh, look at that. It's a Scorpio sun. So Marie Antoinette, born November 2nd, and Ivanka Trump, born October 30th. So just like when we did the chart for Greta Thunberg and Joan of Arc, they were just born a few days apart. They're both Capricorns. And what we see here with Ivanka and Marie Antoinette, we see the sun-sun conjunction again. Right here, right? Boom. That's a hit. That's a match. Let's see. We have Vesta, which is conjunct right here, Ivanka's sun. Interesting, right? This is the eternal flame. So theoretically, the flame or the torch of Marie Antoinette would be passed to Ivanka Trump. Right there. Here you go. It's like what they do at the Olympics before they light the Olympic torch. The flame is being passed. Vesta here for Marie Antoinette is at, let's see. Oh, that's Ivanka Trump. My bad. So Ivanka Trump's flame. All right. So, okay. So it's coming the other direction with Marie Antoinette's vertex and her sun. And so, yeah, it's true, though. Ivanka Trump now is carrying the flame, right? There it is. It's coming in the other direction. The sun lighting the flame. So Ivanka Trump's Vesta is at 14 Scorpio, and Marie Antoinette's sun is at 10 Scorpio. Sun Venus conjunction. Her Venus is at 11 Scorpio. Ivanka 6 Scorpio. And then here's vertex, which is conjunct Ivanka's Juno right here. Boom, right? The marrying maiden in Scorpio. And then we have Ivanka's Black Moon Lilith conjunct Marie Antoinette's Mercury. And then the part of fortune, Ivanka's part of fortune, which is also conjunct her moon, is also in kind of a wide conjunction with Marie Antoinette's Mercury. So Ivanka Trump's moon is at 6 Sagittarius, and Marie Antoinette's Mercury is at 3 Sagittarius. And Ivanka Trump's Black Moon Lilith is at 4 Sag, 1 degree off of Marie Antoinette's Mercury. So there are all these really interesting conjunctions right here. But here's where, to me, the real kicker, man, the real kicker, right? This is Ivanka Trump's, theoretically, South Node in Capricorn. This is the what's connected to the past life, right? Previous life. It's conjunct Marie Antoinette's Saturn. So her South Node is conjunct Marie Antoinette's Saturn. That's time. That's time. Saturn is time, especially in Capricorn. Marie Antoinette's Saturn is at 23 cap, and then Ivanka Trump's South Node. Oh yes, Jasper, I love you too. Is at 25. So 20. So look at that, right there. Boom. And so in this lifetime, right? So Ivanka is going through her nodal return, or has been already, and it's conjunct Marie Antoinette's part of fortune. Really interesting stuff. Really interesting. And then we have, again, with Marie Antoinette's true node, which is here in Virgo. Of course, Ivanka has Mars in Virgo, but she also happens to have Pallas right here, conjunct the true node. And look at that, a Pallas conjunction. What are the odds on that? Pallas at 23 Virgo, Pallas at 22 Virgo. And how I view Pallas is a lot like Hera. That's how I view Pallas. It's a lot like Hera, the consort of the king. And they're conjunct, off by 1 degree. I mean, there's some serious past life shit going on here. So I'm going to lay it out there that I do believe that that Donald Trump was Louis the 16th, and that Ivanka Trump was Marie Antoinette during the French Revolution. I'm just laying it out there. There's just too many connections here. Too many connections. Saturn, Moon, Sun. We have let's see. We've got Vesta to the sun lighting the flame, right? Passing the torch. Then we have this South Node Saturn conjunction. It's right there. Right there. Boom. And let's see. Marie Antoinette had the South Node in Pisces, and true node in Virgo. And of course, we have the connection between the two palaces. Very interesting stuff. Really super interesting. Yeah. If we could make a case based on 2 charts aligning in a past life, it would be Marie Antoinette and Ivanka Trump right here. For me, this is the kicker. That South Node Saturn conjunction. And then, of course, the 2 suns that are conjunct. Wild, huh? Wild. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? I think there's a connection there. And I think that the Trump hysteria has a lot to do with the French Revolution. It's the same kind of hysteria. And we're kind of there now, right? It's what it feels like. It feels like Trump is the new Louis the 16th. When we had that image of Kathy Griffin with the head detached from Trump's body, right? The decapitated head. So we're definitely occupying that timeline. All right, let me check back in with you guys. She better watch her head. Absolutely. Maybe I should ask you, Robert, how do you consider past lives? Were some ghosts of them finished? But I think past lives are complicated. I think I think time is complicated. I don't think we fully understand time. Time is one of those things where it appears to be linear, but it's not. It appears to be over, but it isn't. It appears to be kind of one sort of one line, but it's not. It's not. I never thought about the head. Definitely a connection. Hey, Aline, nice to see you. Wonder if their astrologer told them something. I don't know. It would seem the odds are against it. It would, but you look at those two charts, pretty connected, pretty connected. Internet's slow here. What else? Let's see what else. Maybe I should ask you. Or some ghost with unfinished business. Let's see. It's pretty crazy, Robert. I'm not big on reincarnation, but this is making me believe. It's really a trip, right? I mean, they are so connected. I mean, let me just throw it back up there. It's kind of an encore, you know? Let me just do this real fast. Um, and what was really interesting is like, I mean, hold on. I was just going on my hunches. I was just going on a hunch that that there would be a connection, because if there was a connection with Trump and Louis the 16th, and even with that fixed star Algol, because that's what really got me to think about this whole idea, was when I saw that on his midheaven. It was like decapitation. And then I started to dig deeper and deeper, and the connections with his chart with that time. And then the chart with Louis the 16th was even kind of mind blowing. And then I'm like, okay, well, who would Marie Antoinette be? Well, certainly it's not. It's not Melania. It's Ivanka. I thought, okay, well, let me check out Ivanka Marie Antoinette, and there it is. Sun conjunction, Sun conjunct Vesta. We got the South Node. To me, the South Node on Saturn. That is like that's the fingerprint right there. The South Node on Saturn, right there. And then we have the True Node conjunct the part of Fortune. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. So, it's also a fascinating question about time and reincarnation. Is she the reincarnation of Marie Antoinette? Possibly, could be. Does she represent, kind of an echo in time of that persona? And I think what Stephen was bringing up was, is there kind of this, like a zeitgeist, like a time ghost that has unfinished business. And because of the unfinished business, it could theoretically, merge with another individual, and that if there was an astrological alignment, that maybe through that individual, that would be when perhaps the time ghost would slip in to the incarnational experience. Something to think about. At the very least, from this kind of idea or model of what consciousness is and what energy is, and what a body is and what a personification is, and two bodies based on their charts that seem to reflect one another in different periods of time. It's an interesting discussion at the very least. And George Patton believed in reincarnation, and there seems to be a great deal of interesting information and insight on the topic and the subject. Edgar Casey was big on it, and apparently so is David Wilcock. All right, so let me check in with you guys. I'm about to sign off here to see where you're at. I've had some past life recalls. I can dig it, Robert. Feeling right about the French Revolution. Yes, absolutely. Any guesses on who Kushner was in a past life? Oh God. Ugh. I mean, who would Kushner be? I don't know. I don't think he even really. I don't think he deserves any kind of past life consideration. Benedict Arnold. Could he be Benedict Arnold? I think maybe he's Benedict Arnold in a past life, who apparently was a patriot at one point. He got pissed off, right? He pissed off and joined the other side. Maybe Kushner was Robespierre. Robespierre. Which side was Robespierre? Let me find out. Jasper's in a playful mood tonight. Maximilien Robespierre. He's a Taurus. I think Jared Kushner's a Capricorn, right? Pretty sure of it. Pretty sure. Let's see. Mm-hmm. January 10th. Jared Kushner's true node is right on Trump's Pluto. That tells you everything you need to know. Trump has his Pluto in the 12th house. Let me just do something really fast. Hold on a second. Hold on. I just got to see something here. Just a little hunch. See what we got here. Oh, this is interesting. There's all kinds of stuff on. Oh my God. There's all kinds of stuff on Ivanka and Marie Antoinette. All kinds of stuff on Ivanka and Marie Antoinette. Very interesting. What do we have here? Let's see. What is this? There's some interesting stuff. Hold on. There's this one thing that I saw here. Okay. This is from January 9th. Opinion. Ivanka Trump is America's Marie Antoinette. It's right here. California Newswire. I'll show you right here. Right there. Opinion. Ivanka Trump is America's Marie Antoinette. Excessively coddled and carefully coiffed, Ivanka Trump is not the orange whisperer who will guide our fascist madman president away from errors. Interesting. You can tell that they're not Trump fans, this website. So they go through all these different people, neo-fascist supreme, blah, blah, blah. What else we have here? Here's from Teen Vogue, right? Is it the same story? Okay. Ivanka Trump is being compared to Marie Antoinette for her latest Instagram. Let them eat cake has been a common reply. Yesterday, January 28th, as refugees around the country were detained at airports, with others worrying about the consequences of President Trump's Muslim ban. Oh, how'd that go? First daughter, Ivanka Trump, took to social media to post a glamour shot. So there we go. There we go. Yay. Ivanka Trump. Others have been commenting with the hashtag let them eat cake, the quote that has been attributed to Marie Antoinette. Here we go. Here's the connections. Let's see. Check this out. No. Okay. And there's more. There's more. What else do we have? This is a poem. Poets reading the news. Ivanka Trump encounters Marie Antoinette. At night, the daughter of the self-proclaimed King of the Jews finds her Louboutin heels slip in the pudding earth of La Madeleine. She expected to be lost in a haboob, the voices of children tearing at her tasteful cream dress. With every sand, instead she feels bone and silk. Her foot drags up the gilt garter, clinging to the femur, the threads of gray flesh, the torn vastus, medallius that once bowed at mass, or for La Papa Roy, grandfather king, a man of many women, Just like her own father, she stumbles, goes down with her hand braced for impact, and feels the forehead wrinkle in surprise or outrage. Another blonde at fellow father's eye, another emissary of mama. A royal suite, a broken figurine that stares up at her with blowfly blues and says, Mandu, ce n'est pas, c'est quoi tu penses, ne sais pas. My French is horrible. My God, it's not the way you thought it would be. There you go. So there's a lot of Ivanka. There's a lot of Ivanka Marie Antoinette stuff out there. Figures. Do the astromath. Okay, I'm out of here. Thank you for being a part of tonight's show. You've been checking out, listening to, hanging out with me, Robert Phoenix, Jasper, and you are the best chat room in all of the internet. Chatlandia rocks, man. I'll be back probably Sunday night. Pretty sure I'll be doing Sunday night show, but I'll be taking the week off, working on a few things. I am doing readings. You can get a reading from me if you like over at robertphoenix.com. I'm going to be sending out some newsletter fairly soon. I'm going to be putting up some specials for the holidays. I do this every year, and it allows people to. I do like small like packages. So if you wanted to buy 2 or 3 readings, I make it really super affordable. You know, like you can buy half-hour readings at a discount, and you can buy like 2 or 3. You can hand them out as gifts. I have little gift certificates. So it's really a cool gift. I do this every year, and some years it's really popular. So I'll have that up on my website, and I'll also be sending out a newsletter too as well. All right, be careful. Transit of Mercury. Have a great 11/11, and I'll see you back here next week. Use your head to discern what's real and your heart to stay up on what's possible. And for me and Jasper, have a great night.